Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. For those of you who are new here, I'm Isabella. I go by Easy. I am an illustrator and character designer and also software developer. I like to bring ideas to life in my cozy and peaceful workspace, so I thought I would make a series of videos about it. In episode 1, we explored how to design a character starting from prompts, covering character ideation, research, thumbnails, sketches, color palette, and final design. Today, in episode 2, I'm taking you with me through my entire process for designing and illustrating a book cover, from initial concept to final design. I know we always say to not judge a book by its cover, but that's actually what happens 99% of the time. The cover is arguably the most crucial element in promoting a book because it's the first thing readers notice. So a well-designed cover can draw people in while hinting at the plot and giving them a preview of what they're about to read. So let's break down how to bring a book cover to life. Before we start designing, I think it's essential to introduce some simple terminology related to the layout of a book cover. The basic parts characterizing it and that are important to remember are front, back, and spine. Each part contains specific design elements that play a role in showcasing the genre of a book, its protagonist or protagonists, and even the plot. The front usually features title, imagery, and author's name, sometimes even subtitle, reviews, and publisher logo. The spine can include title, author, and publisher logo, and the back usually displays a short description of the story, ISBN and barcode, sometimes even price and reviews. Another important thing to note is that sometimes books, rather than having standard covers, actually come with cover jackets, which are basically paper covers that fold into the book from front to back. These jackets might include additional details on the flaps. That can be the author's biography, ISBN, a short summary of the book, publisher name, publishing date, or even more imagery in some cases. Understanding the layout of a book cover is essential to know all the relevant information that we as illustrators and designers need to collect from our clients before even approaching the design process. Which brings us to the next topic, that is understanding the client's requirements. Whether you're working with a publishing company or were contacted by a private author, understanding your client's needs is key. So before even signing the contract, make sure to gather as much information as possible so that you have a clear idea of what your client wants. They will usually send you a brief containing, for example, details about the characters, such as their physical appearance, background stories, and goals and motivations even. It'll also contain a summary of the book and their overall vision for the cover if they have one already. Depending on the client, such brief can be more or less detailed, so don't hesitate to ask follow-up questions to make sure you're aligned with what they want. Once you've gathered as much information as possible and you're confident with your client's vision, it's time to set up your canvas with the proper settings. If you're working with a publishing company, they might already provide a template file containing all the correct settings, plus some guidelines to help you with the design. But if, on the other hand, you're working with a private author who usually doesn't have a template ready, or the publishing company didn't provide any template for some reason, you'll need to ask them for specifics. The most important things to know before starting with the design are canvas size, so basically the overall dimensions of the book cover, usually in millimeters. Bleeding area, very important, which is the extra space on the borders to account for the natural movement of the paper that occurs during the book production process. You want to make sure all the relevant information, such as text and important elements in the illustration, are inside this bleeding area, because everything that is outside might be cut off. Another important thing is layout and overall measurements. You want to know whether the final design will include only the front cover, front and back, or front, back and spine, or front, back, spine, and also flaps. And based on this layout, you'll need precise measurements of how big each area is. So basically, you'll need to know where an area ends and the other one begins. Last but not least, color profile. So CMYK or RGB, which depends on the printing company. The most commonly used is CMYK, but it's important to be specific about it because the color range the CMYK profile offers is very different and much more limited than the one the RGB profile offers, especially in terms of saturation. So if you color your book cover with an RGB profile, for example, and then later find out that the printing company requires a CMYK one, you'll need to convert your illustration from RGB to CMYK and the colors will look completely different. So you want to make sure that doesn't happen by setting your canvas to the proper color profile in advance. Okay, now our canvas is all set. Mine in this case is RGB. The cover will only have front and back, so no spine and no flaps. And I've got my bleeding area, so I'm gonna make sure to not draw anything important outside of it. So it's finally time to brainstorm some ideas. My book is actually a very short graphic novel that is called The Hidden Door and is about two people, Maximilian and Clara, that I've already designed, working at a public library and finding a map in an ancient, leather-bound, shimmering book. Such map will eventually lead them to a hidden door that will open to reveal a magical room full of ancient books, artifacts, and overall a whimsical scenario. So keeping this in mind, we can start making quick thumbnail sketches to capture the essence of the story, focusing mainly on its setting and central elements. We don't want to spoil the magical room on the cover, so the central elements will only be characters, door, and shimmering book. And since the story is set at a public library, we could try adding some bookshelves here and there while keeping an overall mysterious tone. At this stage, it's all about playing with ideas very roughly and not focusing on the details just yet. We want to keep the composition simple but impactful, focusing on shapes, values, and contrast that can help us guide the viewer's eye towards our focal point. Even in these early stages of the design, consider leaving room for text and other elements, such as title and author's name. We don't want to finalize anything without knowing where we're going to put the text first. Now that we've come up with a few thumbnails, we can select the most promising ones and clean them up slightly by roughly sketching over them. This is where we start to define lines, shapes, and placement and size of key elements, such as our characters, title, and other text. Very important, we don't want to overcrowd the back cover. We don't want it to be more detailed than the front cover, and also it's going to include a short summary and other info, so we need to keep in mind to leave space for those. At this stage, I typically send 3 to 5 sketches to the client, along with some ideas for the values to get their feedback. After the client selects their favorite sketch, it's time to refine the lines and finalize sketch and color palette. I've decided to move forward with the first sketch since I feel like it's the only one containing all the elements that I need, so characters, book, door, and bookshelves. I'm going for a warm but slightly moody palette to match the library atmosphere, but also the mysterious tone of the story. Once the sketch is refined and we feel good with the overall palette, we can send everything to the client once again, and when the design is approved, we can proceed to its finalization. This is when we can finally put on a relaxing playlist, go with the flow, and trust the process, following the sketch and palette we've already established. At this stage, I would normally start by blocking in the local colors, that are those pure colors characterizing the scene in absence of any lights and shadows. Then I would add lighting and finally details and texture to bring the illustration to life. While doing this, I make sure to balance simplicity and complexity in favor of my focal point. So adding details and texture only in areas nearest to it, in order to draw the viewer's eye even more towards it. As a finishing touch, I like to apply some color adjustments using Procreate's tools, such as color balance, curves, chromatic aberration, and noise. Now that the final illustration is complete, it's time to focus on the typography. If you're working with a publishing company, chances are they might already have a graphic designer handling the arrangement of text and other elements of the cover. However, if you're working with a private author, it's likely you're gonna have to come up with your own layout and font style. Now, I'm an illustrator, not a graphic designer, so I know finding the right font for this part of the design can be a huge struggle. It's not only about finding a font that complements the illustration, but it also needs to be professional, the client has to like it, the text needs to be completely legible and impactful, but also blend seamlessly with the cover's overall aesthetic. It needs to be connected to the story's mood and possibly even the plot. So there are a lot of things to consider, and creating variations of the design to show clients while exploring different styles can be really time-consuming. And this is where Kittl, who's also the sponsor of this portion of the video, comes to the rescue. Kittl is a design platform that helps creating professional quality text designs with minimal effort. They offer more than 1,000 integrated fonts, plus templates and design tools that make it super easy to experiment and create different variations of a design in literally no time. Finding a font is very straightforward. You can either play with the ones directly integrated into the editor to find the one that you like, or if you already have a specific style in mind, you can search for it by typing in the right keyword in the font search. Like, for example, vintage, if you're going for something vintage, comic, or handwriting. You can also upload your own fonts to use them in your designs. Just make sure they're licensed for commercial use first. Kittl also allows you to transform your text into shapes to make the design even more unique. The process is easy and intuitive, and I love that there are lots of possible customizations available. If you need to explore different ideas to show your client, you can also build multiple artboards that allow you to streamline your design process and easily create different variations all in one place. I love how intuitive the interface is to use, and I like that it gives me full creative control without needing to be a typography expert. So thank you, Kittl, for sponsoring this portion of the video. If you're working on any design projects, whether it's book covers like in this case or any other creative layouts, make sure to check out Kittl following the link in my description. If you're a new user, you can use the code AGOSTYT for 25% off the first month or year of any paid plan. So here's the final outcome for our book cover, depicting our two librarians on their quest of following a mysterious map they found in an ancient book that will eventually lead them into a hidden door inside the public library they work at. I hope this video gave you a clear sense of all the steps involved in bringing a book cover to life, and maybe even inspired you to create one of your own. If there's anything specific you'd like to ask me about this video, or if you have any suggestions on what you'd like to see in the next episode of this Bringing an Idea to Life series, let me know in the comments down below, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.